A few months back, I posted a video talking about how I sold off my entire retro video game collection. The price of retro video games right now is absolutely crazy. I think we're in a bit of a bubble and it's a great time to sell and not a great time to buy if you love old video games. One of the reasons I didn't mention for selling off my collection is right before selling, I came up with an awesome way to emulate all of my favorite old games while still getting that old school feel. See, a couple years back, I purchased a heavily modded arcade 1-up arcade machine. I say heavily modded because the previous owner obviously put a lot of care into this. Usually when you see these things modded, it's as simple as throwing a Raspberry Pi in the back. In addition to this, the previous owner upgraded the speakers, as well as the joysticks and the buttons. This gives it that traditional arcade machine feel. Now he also added a bunch of arcade classics, including titles like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, the legendary Simpsons game, Tetris, Rampage World Tour, and roughly 500 more games. Now, as great as it is to have all of these games, other than the few that I just mentioned, I don't have a lot of nostalgic ties to any of them. But one day I woke up with a crazy idea of throwing a bunch of otherwise unplayable, extremely expensive old Nintendo games on this arcade machine. One of those games, and the main focus of this video, is Super Mario RPG. See, up until really recently, I thought Super Mario RPG was going to be one of those games that was lost in time. The history of this game is pretty complicated. It's a Super Mario game, but it was actually developed by Square, the company best known for creating Final Fantasy. Now, up until this point, Square and Nintendo had an excellent relationship. All of the mainline Final Fantasy games were Nintendo and Super Nintendo exclusives. But just a year after the release of Super Mario RPG, Square decided to take its talents to Sony's PlayStation.
Man, it's very tough. In this form, I'm going to take my talents to
PlayStation.
In 1997, Final Fantasy VII was released as a PlayStation 1 exclusive. Nintendo felt betrayed, and that soured their long-standing relationship. Now, in recent years, they seem to have patched this relationship up a lot, with Final Fantasy 1 through 12 all being available on the Nintendo Switch. But most people still associate Square Enix with Sony. You can even see this on the recent release of Final Fantasy 16 being a PlayStation exclusive. That is why up until the recent announcement of the remake of Super Mario RPG, many people like myself thought we were never going to see this game again. With the closure of the Wii U eShop, the only legal way to play this game is buying a Super Nintendo cartridge, and thanks to resellers, one of those will cost you over $100 typically. Now, full disclosure here, I do not support piracy of video games if it is something that is still readily available on the market. If Nintendo was still selling a version of this game, I would have happily paid for it, but there's no way I'm going to pay $100 to some reseller. With that being said, I am looking forward to the remake and I will be buying it, so please don't sue me for this video, Nintendo. So as you can see, the arcade machine is doing an excellent job of emulating this game. The graphics are smooth and the sound is fantastic. My only complaint is not having an arcade stool with lumbar support, so after about an hour of gaming here, my lower back is definitely feeling it. Still, I'd say it's definitely worth it for some of those nostalgic gaming sessions. If you were ever thinking about getting an arcade 1-up machine, now seems like the perfect time. They kind of oversaturated their own market, and that's causing the prices to drop quite heavily. On top of Super Mario RPG, I'm going to show you some of the other cool games you could actually play on here. Here's some gameplay of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. If you're a masochist, you could play difficult games like Super Metroid. On the Game Boy Advance side of things, we have the legendary Legacy of Goku trilogy on here. In my opinion, this is the absolute best Dragon Ball Z RPG game and an absolute must-play if you're a fan of the series. One day I might get into Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but that day is not today. The most nostalgic game I have on here for me is Pokemon Crystal for the Game Boy Color. If you've seen my video talking about why Pokemon Gold and Silver are the best Pokemon games in my opinion, you'd understand why this game holds a special place in my heart. I also want to mention that you can even play multiplayer on the Super Nintendo games. Here's some footage of the classic Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Note, I'm just demonstrating that it's possible. I'm obviously not able to play as both players at once and actually accomplish anything. I only have a Raspberry Pi 3 in the back, but if you get a better version like the Raspberry Pi 4, you could actually probably run Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 games on here. So that's all for the video today, guys. The main point of this video was to kind of demonstrate what you're able to do on these arcade 1-up machines, and to flex a little bit of Super Mario RPG in one of the coolest ways. If you've ever thought about picking one of these machines up, I think now is a great time because you're able to find them relatively cheap. If you enjoyed this video, or if it gave you some ideas for your arcade 1-up machine, be sure to like and subscribe. Also comment down below letting me know if I should suffer through the lower back pain and try to actually finish Super Mario RPG on this arcade machine. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.